Hey guys, how are you? Hope you're all having a fantastic whatever time it is in your part of the world. If you're Australian, it's very late in the evening. Once again, not really that tired, so I thought I will jump onto YouTube and do another review for you all because I haven't done one for a few days. So hopefully you're all doing very fine and you find this review interesting. Now, some things never change. This is another French horror film, so foreign language, English subtitles, but it is a little bit different seeing that it is from the 1960s, 1960 to be exact. Now, obviously, this is not going to be as brutal and as shocking as the new wave of French horror, but I'm going to put a little bit of variation in my French horror collection and do a review of a film that was really regarded as the first Gore film made. Now, a lot of French films were made before this in the horror genre, but this is the one that really got France on the map and got them noticed. So for a French horror fanatic such as myself, this one is a must in my collection. So as I said, made in 1960, directed by Georges Franchu, and this movie is called Eyes Without a Face. And the story is as follows. A brilliant surgeon by the name of Dr. Genessier, helped by his assistant Louise, kidnaps nice young women. He removes their faces and tries to graft them onto the head of his beloved daughter Christiane, whose face has been entirely spoiled in a car crash. All the experiments fail and the victims die, but Genessier keeps trying. So the start of the film, we've got this middle-aged woman driving what appears to be a dead body in the back seat. Now, we don't know for sure it's dead, but the viewer will have the assumption that it is dead because it's not moving and it's slumped. And that assumption is in fact correct. And this middle-aged woman, we have no idea what the hell's going on, but we know that she knows what's going on. So she stops the car and disposes of the body in this river. And she basically gets back in the car and drives off. The next day, the police uncover this body, and it turns out that this young female has had her face removed. So it's a ghastly homicide. The police are baffled as to what the hell the motives were. But then the police call this very, very brilliant doctor named Dr. Genessier. And it turns out that Genessier's daughter had been missing for a very long time. And the police have fears that this body that's been recovered is Genessier's daughter. So Genessier comes to identify the body, and he ends up saying that, yes, that is my daughter. So the police stop the search for his daughter because they are under the belief that this dead body is her. So Genessier ends up going back home, and this is where the viewer realizes that Genessier hasn't been truthful. The reality is that Genessier was involved in a car crash. He was driving a car that resulted in the crash, and his daughter, who was traveling with him, was horribly disfigured in this crash. And she is basically living life as a leper. She doesn't want to go outside because she doesn't want to greet the world with her horribly disfigured, hideous face. So she wears a mask and she is a little bit of an outcast. And the police were noticing this, and they were becoming very, very worried, and they were searching, they were asking questions. So Genessier used this opportunity just to say, yes, it's her. Obviously, they didn't have the forensic ability that they do these days, so that he got away with it. But the dead body that was found is very much connected to Genessier. The middle-aged woman at the start of the film is Genessier's either wife or partner in business, and it turns out Genessier was responsible for that woman losing her face. Now, what Genessier is doing, he is kidnapping beautiful young women, the same age as his daughter, and he's basically cutting off their faces in a face transplant and trying to put them on his daughter's head to give her a new face and give her a new lease of life. But the daughter's body is rejecting all these faces, and it's just completely ruined. So each time it fails, the daughter is becoming more and more dejected, and she's losing hope that she will be able to get back to life, or to start living life again, I should say. But the doctor is not going to give up on his daughter. He is absolutely riddled with guilt. He sees this as his fault, and he's not going to stop until his daughter has the happiness that he thinks that she deserves. And it really is to settle his own sort of conscience. So the doctor is kidnapping more and more of these young women, taking off their faces. The victims die, but time and time again, the body of the daughter is rejecting these faces. So as the body count rises, so does the suspicions from the police, and they're asking more and more questions of Genessier. So he really is in a race against time. He wants to save his beautiful daughter, and at the same time he has to stay under the radar. So I'm not going to go any further into the film and what happens. I don't want to spoil it. A very sort of simplistic sort of storyline, but it's a very beautiful sort of storyline in its morbid kind of way. So if you want to know more, please go and see the film for yourself, because I don't want to give any spoilers. But that's basically it. I'm not going to tell you if the doctor succeeds or if the police catch him. That's something that you'll have to wait and see. Now my thoughts on the film. Being a film from 1960, I'm not really into really old movies. I really don't know what to expect. I really only got into French horror in the new wave sort of stuff. And since loving that stuff, I've gone deeper into the French horror history. And of course, I've heard so much about this film, finally got to watch it, and I can say that it is a very, very simplistic film, but it is very, very effective. Now, the simplicity of the film and the subtleties of the film are what make it so great. There is no cheap twists. There are no jump scares. It is a horror film, but it's really the horror of everyday life and tragedy. Now, there are no real villains. Well, Genessier is crazy, but you can tell why he's crazy, and it really is, like I've said in a few other films, they are a victim of circumstances, and for me, that is the best kind of horror, because you kind of are scared of the villain, but you can understand him, which makes it even more frightening, for me at least. And, the characters, the young girl, she really wants a face, and she knows that what's going on is wrong, but she just really wants to get back to living, and you can really feel sorry for everybody involved. It is a film that's not going to leave you satisfied if the villain gets what he deserves, because it's just done in a way that the director really doesn't judge anyone, and he shows that, good people, if you've got enough guilt, will do anything to make their family happy, even if it means the lives of others. So to me, that was what was the most scary thing about it. Now, for a 1960 film, the gore was very shocking. By today's standard, it is pretty tame, but I was not expecting just the level of graphic sort of gore in the film. Really, really surprised, as you can see on the back there. You can kind of guess what the gore scene will be. It was a huge surprise, and at the end there is a nice mauling scene that was quite shocking as well. So this really is the inside of 1960. Back in its time, it really did shock the viewing public, and it outraged a lot of people, and I can see why. And it's typical of the French to create something that's going to be very, very provocative, and this is exactly what the film is. Very subtle, as I said, this soundtrack was very subtle, but very, very good. It really did stay with me, and it really created the atmosphere. And, the character development was just really, really good, and it really got me into the film. Now, the running time was 80 odd minutes, so for an old film, a lot of them are epics, but this one is not an epic. It really runs at a very good rate. Usually I get bored of old films, but this one really had my attention from start to finish. It is regarded as extreme. I will say it's an extreme film, because back in its time, it really did shock a lot of people, and you can see why. So if you're a French horror fan, I would highly recommend you go out there and see this one. It doesn't cheat the audience. What you see is what you get. It is just simplistic storytelling, and it's, the best kind of storytelling. It's just, back in the old days, they really did know how to make their films simple. They didn't glorify anything. They didn't overindulge in anything. And it's just, good old-fashioned horror. And if you're a fan of French horror, and you're a fan of the new wave extreme, and you want to know where it all started, then this one is definitely a good starting point. I would definitely recommend it. It is a masterpiece. It is a beautiful film, and at the same time, a very heartbreaking and very disturbing one at that. So that's my review of Eyes Without a Face. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later.